Hello, and today we're going to look at how to solve a quadratic equation by using the formula. Okay, so in order to solve a quadratic, and of course a quadratic has the highest power of x as x squared, first we try to factorise, because this is the easier and quicker method. However, if we cannot factorise a quadratic, we must use the quadratic formula. And the quadratic formula, which you've probably seen before, is x equals minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Now, one question that does pop up a lot in my sessions is, what is this plus or minus? And the plus or minus basically is the square root of 49, for instance, is plus 7 and negative 7. Okay, so there's two solutions. Now if you go into complex numbers it does get a little bit more tricky, but at the minute we're just going to concentrate on so for instance the square root of 49 is plus 7 or negative 7, since 7 times 7 is 49, and also negative 7 times negative 7 is also 49. So this formula uses the quadratic, where a, which is this value and this value, is the number in front of the x squared. The b's, which is this and this, is the number in front of x, and the c is put here in the quadratic formula. Okay, so what you've always got to make sure is that the equation is equal to 0, as we can see here. Okay, so let's move on. So what we've got here is an example, and what just for this example what I've done is I've written the ax squared minus bx minus c equals 0 above the formula. So the a is 3, the b is negative 8, and the c is positive 19. Okay, so that kind of clarifies where these values here have come from. So what we now do is we substitute these values into the general formula. Now, one thing that I would always recommend is, if you're not given a formula sheet in the exam, then whilst you have got the opportunity to copy out the formula sheet, I would always take the extra 5 seconds or 2 seconds to write out the formula so that you remember it for these exam times. And I know that we actually use quadratic formula quite a lot in engineering, so if you're going to go down an engineering path, you know, you'll probably be using quadratic formula to optimize, also chemistry, etc. So therefore, what we now do is we substitute our values in. So b is minus 8, so that becomes negative, which is that negative, negative 8, which is the b, plus or minus the square root of minus 8 squared. And just bearing in mind here that the minus 8 squared, you've got to put brackets around the minus and the 8, like how I've done here. And that's because if you were to just put minus 8 squared into the calculator without the brackets around it, then what the calculator would do is it would square the 8 and then just add on the negative, so it would be negative 64, when we all know that minus 8 times minus 8 is positive 64. And then we take away 4 times a, and a is 3, times minus 19, which is our c. And again, I just put the values down in brackets because that's just my sort of way of doing it. Brackets in mathematics means times. So then on the denominator we've got 2a, and 2 times a is 2 times 3. So now what we do is we simplify what's underneath the square root and what's under and the minus 8 at the beginning. As you can see, minus 8 minus minus 8, two negatives next to each other make a positive. I mean, basically what that's saying is, what's the difference between 0 and negative 8, and that is 8. Okay, so the actual difference between them. So now what we've got to do is we've got to simplify what's under the square root. And minus 8 all squared minus 4 times 3 times minus 19 is 292. And now what we need to do is to take into account this plus or minus here. So the plus or minus here is we can either add 8 add square root of 292 divided by 6, which is this one, or we can take it away. Now just a quick note here that the line here shouldn't be under the x, it should just go up to that 8 there, it's just a typo. Okay, so basically when we do 8 plus square root of 292 over 6, it becomes 4.18, and on our very unsymmetrical u, the 4.18 would be this one here on the right, and the negative 1.51 root would be here. If you're not sure about roots, just get in contact with us and we'll be able to explain roots, parabolas, etc. Okay, so it's now your turn to have a go at 3 questions, and then, so if you can pause the video, remember to label the equation first, ax squared plus bx plus c, and then we will go through them. Okay, so just pause the video here and work your way through them. Okay, so question 1, and question 1 was 2x squared plus 9x plus 5. So a equals 2, remember the ax squared plus bx plus c. B is the number in front of the x, and c is the number by itself. So what we do here is we substitute into the formula. So a is 2, so a goes in there and there, so 2 and 2. B is 9, so again this time here it would just be minus 9, because b is actually, so if we cover up that negative there, like so, that is 9, and then we add in the negative. Okay, so it becomes negative 9. And c is 5. So now what we then do is we simplify, we take out the brackets at the front, and it becomes minus 9 plus or minus the square root of, and when we simplify this under the square root it becomes 41. So that's 81 take away 40, which is 41. 2 times 2 is 4 on the denominator. And now what we need to do is we need to take into account the two roots, and that is this plus or minus. So basically in one hand we put minus 9 plus root 41, and on the other hand we take it away. So again we'll just get rid of that. Okay, so and then that's your minus there. So your two roots in this case are minus 0.649 to 3 significant figures, and minus 3.85 to 3 significant figures, and these are x-axes. Okay, so let's have a look at question 5. Question 2 now. Page 5, of course. So here what we've got is x squared plus 12x minus 9. So a in this case equals 1, and again, yeah, you'll have seen this quite a few times before. So it's like 1x squared, so therefore it's the number in front of the x squared. The b is the 12 and the c is the minus 9. Ax squared plus bx plus c. So now we substitute these values here into the formula. So first of all, minus 12, because that's your b, plus or minus the square root of 12 squared minus 4 times 1 times minus 19, all over 2 times 1, and there we go. So the first thing that we do is we get rid of the brackets here, and because it's a positive 12, the negative in front means negative 1 times positive 12, which is negative 12, plus or minus, and then the square root of 144 minus 4 times 1 times minus 19 is 220. So then it's all simplified to be minus 12 plus or minus the square root of 220 all over 2. So therefore we've now got to take into account the plus or the minus. So the plus side goes here and the negative goes there. So this side here would become negative 12 plus square root of 220, and that in this case gives us our positive root, and then this one here would be negative 12 minus square root of 220 all over 2. Okay, so last one of these. If you're doing well, well done. Now this one here is slightly more tricky, there's an extra step here. Okay, so what we've got is 5x squared minus x minus 20 equals 2x plus 3. So a quadratic, the ax squared plus bx plus c, so let me just write this, plus bx plus c, it has to equal 0 for us to use the formula. So what we've got to do here is we've got to move this side here over to this side and change side, change sign. The positive 2x plus 3 become negative 2x minus 3. So therefore we've got to take away 2x from that to get minus 3x, and we've got to take away another 3 from that to get the minus 23. And then from here it's very straightforward. So your a value is that, your b value is that, and your c value is that. So let's now substitute into the formula. So what we've got is the minus 3 is b, and it's negative minus 3. Okay, so that will become positive 3 in a moment. And then we've got negative 3 all squared minus 4 times 5 times minus 23, so that's just basic substitution in there, all over 2a. Okay, so then if we come down a little bit further, let me just get rid of that scribble. Okay, so now what we've got is the minus 3 has become positive 3, plus or minus the square root of this, which simplifies to 469, all over 2 times 5 again, which simplifies to 10. Now this is calculator obviously with the decimal places, so you know. Okay, so now what we need to do is to split it into the plus and the minus, and when we substitute these into calculator you get these two answers. Okay, so that is our lesson on solving basic quadratics using the formula. If you have any questions then please click on the link in the description and we are happy to help.